Now, the only good thing that really came out of the Acolyte by Leslye Headland is the fact that it is finally over, and yet damage control mode is still spewing by those like Kathleen Kennedy, Amandla Stenberg, and let's not forget about Leslye Headland herself, who really tarnished the Star Wars brand even further, based on what she did with the Acolyte Episode 3 mostly, and especially let's not forget about Acolyte Episode 7. But going into all of this, we know that there's a lot of things going on with Amandla Stenberg really defending the show at all costs like no tomorrow. They will never admit failure, they will never admit any kind of flaws about this show, and that's a part of their narrative. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So I talked about this on X, Twitter, that the cameos that were shoehorned into the episode 8 of the Acolyte, the finale if you will, are by far a great example of a scenario where it only makes things worse. The fact that we got Yoda at the very tail end of the series makes you just realize that they just destroyed his character even further than what Rian Johnson did in The Last Jedi. Now, looking past all of that, we know that there's a lot of things going on here with Amandla Stenberg. She is not taking the criticism well, based on what's been going on with Acolyte's episode, of course, 1 through 8. Now, what's interesting about this has a lot more to do with the fact that they continue to lie about the show, they continue to lie about the fan base, and it's not making anything better. Let's get into this, shall we? Now, specifically, we already know that everyone else on board, like Kathleen Kennedy and Leslye Headland, they are trying to really push through with fighting back against the Disney heads after they did in fact axe Season 2. They're trying to reinstate that almost immediately. We'll have a lot more to talk about that in the coming days. Now, with the Acolyte Episode 8 now officially released on Disney Plus and already backfiring on a major scale for Disney and Lucasfilm, one major development now has more to do with actress Amandla Stenberg and her reaction after the Acolyte finale failed to reverse the backlash yet again. She delivered the following: I look at Osha and May as by far one of the most unique characters in Star Wars history. You can easily put them up there with Luke and Leia, and I have noticed this recent trend where the minority of fans that are very loud and opinionated, they try to make themselves appear as if they are the majority, and this perception of how Osha and May are the worst characters ever, I think just comes from a place of misogyny, and those same fans that are just so obviously afraid of women getting powerful roles. Leslye realized this too, that these were the types of fans that we would be dealing with. In the finale, we really wanted to explore several aspects of the story that would demystify Osha and May, and how she is able to change the colors of that lightsaber really shows her power and her strength. Leslye really went in creating Episode 8 as this big tease for what could possibly happen, but I am absolutely unwilling to talk about Season 2. I keep getting questions about that, and I have no comment on the status of Season 2. But we have this trend of toxic males that like to ruin the experience for others by labeling Lucasfilm as holding some kind of an agenda for supporting and pushing DEI. Let me tell you something about DEI. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's the most beautiful thing to have happened in the film industry. It has nothing to do with any form of an agenda, and that's where Star Wars fans totally get it wrong. In fact, if you are questioning DEI and are opposed to it, I just think that you are not a fan of this brand at all. Look back at all the other films by George. There just wasn't enough DEI in there, and when Disney finally came into the picture, things changed, especially for the fans. We saw that mostly it was the toxic male demographic that had a serious issue with this support for Kathleen Kennedy to expand to a wider, more global audience for everyone else to enjoy. Now guys, before I move on about what Amandla is spewing yet again about the Acolyte. Now we already know that Episode 8 is just something that is so universally rejected at this point. You can't have Plagueis in there, you can't have Yoda in there and expect it to save the show. It was a very much cheap move by Leslye and Kathy after 7 straight episodes of failure after failure, and then look, oh look, it's Plagueis, oh look, it's Yoda. Do people really believe that that's going to change their mind at the last second? I don't think so. It most certainly didn't for me. I mean, that was the most underwhelming experience that I had in Star Wars in a very long time. Never did I believe that I would stand here to see the day where I would feel zero excitement about seeing Darth Plagueis in an actual Star Wars project. the way that it was done, the way that it was executed, not only felt cheap, but it also kind of changed the character based on what you've read in the books and what you know about the character through various Legends material out there. Now, this is where things get interesting, is that she goes on to continue once more. For those going from different backgrounds, especially in the LGBTQ community, to really relate to some of the characters in the Acolyte is what Leslye Headland's mission was. It's absolutely important that we ignore those same toxic fans going forward with other creators taking on other stories. And look, like I said, I have no comment on Season 2, so don't even ask me. But Osha and May and their story is by far the most revolutionary tale in Star Wars. When was the last time you heard of such a twist that they are literally the same person? Leslye really wanted to do a warped version of Luke and Leia and how that could fit into the High Republic. Of course, fans complaining about the cameos Leslye decided to use briefly in the finale are just complaining for no reason at all, and are just looking for a reason to support their narrative. So here's the other thing, guys, about Amandla Stenberg, right? She goes on to say that Osha and May are the most revolutionary characters. I don't believe so at all. I think, in fact, they are the most destructive characters to Star Wars in history. Not only do they steal elements from Luke and Leia and the whole aspect of the twins, and how that's also somewhat borrowing elements from the Old Republic, but looking at everything else, this twist that they are the same person was very much lazy and really kind of odd, because look, I'm looking at them with my two eyes. They are two different people physically, so to speak, and it doesn't really make sense to the casual viewer as well, if that's what they were trying to do. If you're trying to make things make sense to a casual viewer, I mean, good luck with that, because it's confusing as it is. They say they are one in the same, and at the same exact time they're split. So it really makes very odd sense by Leslye and the other creators on board, like Kathleen Kennedy, and how Dave Filoni approved this. But what's interesting about this is how they believed that Darth Plagueis and Yoda was going to save this show. And I talked about this on Twitter as well. Yoda appearing at the very end makes everything worse. It really does, because now you realize that either A, Yoda was just so dumb that he didn't sense anything than what was going on with the Jedi dying, and the Sith, and everything else happening with the witches creating life, or that he was all in on it in the cover-up that the Jedi created, especially by Vernestra. So it's either or, and it only does things worse for the character of Yoda, just like Rian Johnson did when he made him deliberately goofy, which made no sense at all, because we all know that Yoda being goofy in The Empire Strikes Back was nothing more than a test to see how far he could go before Luke would snap, before Luke would get annoyed, to test his overall restraint on anger and things like that. So, again, I would like to hear what everyone has to say about Amandla and her view of the fans, her view of Episode 8, because we know that based on what the Nielsen ratings read so far a couple of days ago, it's only expected to get worse every 2 weeks, and we'll have to see what the viewership looks like beyond, of course, the middle point of July. So overall, guys, drop a comment below, fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.